Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. We do have a whole lot to cover this morning. We'll do a quick roll call. I am here, Carol Dunn is here, Doug Cohen is here, Kirk Souther is here, Emily Tracy's here, and Kathy Worthington is here, and Ryan is here, and John Behill is here. And why don't you introduce yourself to the committee?
Oh, hello. My name is Chris Moffitt. I'm a citizen of Canyon City, and I'm interested in the process going on here.
Great, welcome, Chris. Glad to see you here. You may find this interesting, but then you may have a warped worldview.
Warped, don't, what do you mean warped? I know what he does on a daily basis, so.
It is warped.
Yeah, I'm a designer for Excel Energy as well. I read the tariff and the franchise agreement regularly for Excel Energy, so I'm just here on my lunch break, actually curious about the process.
Sure, great. Welcome.
Thank you.
We do have two presenters today. We have Jenny Heater from NREL and Gail Connors, I think, will be joining us. And so Jenny, you want to go ahead and get started here?
Sure. Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just pull up some slides. Thank you. I'm in presenter mode. So I was asked to just provide an overview of community solar. So NREL has done work in the community solar space for the last 5 years or so, more in depth. We've gathered data on market trends and also have been engaging folks through the National Community Solar Partnership, which provides technical assistance to anybody interested in the community solar space. So I wanted to just walk through kind of where the market is at and answer questions, have a dialogue. So I think I have maybe 10 or so slides that I'll plan to run through, but happy to answer questions as we go or just have a dialogue. So thanks again for having me. I'm Jenny Heater. I'm with the National Renewable Energy Lab. I've been at the lab for about 13 years, and I've worked in community solar the last 5 years or so. And I want to just start off by saying when I'm talking about community solar, we are distinguishing that in a couple ways from just regular solar projects. So we're talking about projects where there is a subscriber model and people are paying for a subscription. That can be either upfront payment or monthly ongoing payments. But in some way there is, an act by an individual, an organization, a government entity, some sort of purchaser to subscribe to that product. And then secondarily, that subscriber is seeing some sort of bill credit on their bill for the energy that their share is producing, or the renewable attributes or some combination of those things. So wanted to kind of just set the stage as that's the model, the business model that I'm focused on. There are also a lot of other, I would call like adjacent types of models of having a solar project in your community and, serving a load of a particular building or, serving into the distribution infrastructure, transmission infrastructure, but that don't have that subscriber model. So just wanted to, set the stage. That's what we're talking about, what the data here will cover, and some of the trends we'll cover. So at NREL, we track projects that have been deployed using this model across the country. One of the trends we've noticed is that project sizes vary considerably by state. So in this map, the size of the bubble corresponds to how big the project is. You'll see some states like Texas and Florida and Arkansas have focused on very large projects. So these are projects that are 50 megawatts and above, while some other states have focused on projects that are, I would say, like 5 megawatts and under. And some of this is dependent upon how, if there is state regulation, how that state has defined a project size as falling under that regulation. but some of it depends on just what stakeholders are interested in. Some folks feel like community solar, they want it sited in their urban areas. So if that's the case, you're not going to have 50 megawatt projects in an urban area. So overall, we have about 30 states with more than 5 megawatts of installed projects. The fastest growing states we've seen have been Texas, Florida, Rhode Island, Maine, and Illinois, just on a percentage basis. There are 10 states in DC that are, I would say, sort of in pilot mode. So they're, have projects that are less than 5 megawatts. They're just not at scale yet, but are trying some things out. And then we have some states who have not installed community solar at all yet. This is a trend that we have noticed. There's this concentration of projects in a handful of states. Colorado is one of those states that has a significant amount of projects, particularly relative to our size. So we had about, it's a little hard to read there actually, but 126 megawatts of community solar projects in Colorado, and that is across the investor-owned utilities, so across Black Hills, Xcel, and then some of our co-ops and munis in the state also have projects. So Colorado, has been a leader in community solar, hasn't taken off like New York or Massachusetts or Minnesota, but still has a 126 megawatts is not, it's beyond that sort of pilot phase. Something I thought might be relevant for you all as you're thinking about community solar is just issues around consumer protection. So in the state, there's typically, Public Service Commission who's in charge of making sure electricity customers are, not being deceived or, receiving marketing materials that are misleading or things like that. Some states have sort of taken a next step to codify those consumer protections for rooftop PV customers and or community solar customers, just to make sure that if there's a third party coming in, that marketing material they send out is not misleading or things like that. So that is an area we have a little bit more research on, of just what types of protections are common across these states. But high level, it's just, wanting to make sure that people understand what they're buying. If there's some like assumptions around how much you might save or assumptions around, all those stipulations in the contracts that customers are actually, knowing what they're signing up for.
Jenny, before you move on from there, I do have,
Yep.
two questions actually. Number one, can you send us these slides? It'd be really great if you could.
Sure.
And you can probably send them to Emily, will be fine, and we'll get them out to the group. My other question is, are the consumer protections that you're seeing being enacted by state consumer protection agencies or state public utilities commissions?
I've usually seen it through the Public Utilities Commission, and sometimes they're required by the law that was passed, like the enabling legislation for community solar will direct the PUC to adopt consumer protections. I know that's what's happening in New Mexico. They were fairly recent to passing new legislation. We have worked with a couple states where, like the Attorney General's office or some other state agency is involved in that process of determining what those protect, because they're tasked with consumer protection more broadly. So it does seem like they're usually pulled in, at least, to be part of those conversations.
Thanks.
Yep. Great. So one thing I wanted to talk about is bill savings that can happen through community solar. On the NREL side, we gather data on how much people are saving by subscribing to different contract structures. And we try to roll that all up to understand you know, how much money is this market saving customers on a national basis? We have to do a lot of estimation because we don't have, in particular, we don't have commercial contracts and we only have residential contracts. So we focus on that market. But on the whole, we like to use this figure to note that, I don't think this is in here, but 80% of the folks subscribing to community solar are saving money by participating. So while we still do see some offers that are requiring folks to pay more, on the whole, subscriptions are structured so that the subscriber saves money, if not day one, you know, before the term of their contract is over. So when we total all that up on the residential side, we're looking about $88 million in 2021 nationally. We work for the Department of Energy, and they have set a target to achieve $1 billion in savings from 2021 through 2025. So we're working with them to, make sure that we see things in the market like, you know, 20% off products instead of 10% off products, making sure that, you know, communication around community solar is, focused on this value that it can, this financial value that it can provide to customers. One of the other trends that we're tracking is an emphasis on low and moderate income, or LMI, subscribers. And this has, you know, kind of emerged as a way for states or utilities to support their LMI customers by pulling them into community solar products that can save them money. We know, obviously, you know, LMI customers would benefit more if they're on a product that saves them money. So some states and utilities have typically either had an carve out of their program. So like if they have a 50 megawatt program, they'll carve out a portion of that that's required to be subscribed by LMI customers. This data presents projects that are operational in that dark blue, and then light blue is the planned projects that have been dedicated to LMI households. So I'd say there's a lot of like policy environment here, and then deployment that's starting to happen. I would still say it's kind of early stages in terms of getting these projects off the ground, but a lot of momentum. And one of the reasons we see that is just because we know that low and moderate income households have a higher energy burden, so they pay more of their monthly, you know, household income in electricity, gas, and fuel. And to the extent that, you know, utilities are interested in making sure customers can pay their bills, that, you know, for whatever reason you might have, you know, there's motivation by a lot of stakeholders to lower energy burden for these households. So this data is very in the weeds on a program out of Massachusetts that's focused on providing discounted bills essentially through community solar subscriptions. The yellow portions there are the reductions in bills that happen through their subscription and then through this low income adder that they have. So yeah, it's basically trying to find a way to reduce bills from low income customers and make sure that they can continue to pay those bills as they move forward through the year. And I've got just one last slide I wanted to tee up. Another emerging area we're seeing is interest in community solar and storage and pairing those together. Some of this is starting to happen in Massachusetts and New York, but more broadly, we think that through some changes in the tax credits that this will happen more in the future of pairing these projects together, providing benefits to the utility if they're able to kind of better manage their peak demand or just other kind of system needs, but then also providing better value to subscribers. So This is data from Massachusetts. They have a good chunk of projects operational, almost 60 projects operational, another good set that's been qualified, which means they've been, like approved to move forward. And then they also have an interesting angle where they are adding in low income customers into these paired projects. So it's kind of just a unique policy environment that's allowed them to develop community solar plus storage projects that are serving low income customers. So that's what I was, wanted to run through in terms of slides. And yes, I will send these slides out, and happy to answer any questions or have more conversation. I'd love to hear from you guys about where you're at and what's going on in Canyon City.
Sure, thanks. We got some questions, Emily.
Hi Jenny, thanks for being here. I'm sorry I didn't email this to you yet, Jenny, but I'm sending around a hard copy of some numbers from the city of Canyon City. A few months ago, I had asked, just how are the numbers looking since the city is a subscriber, and our city administrator, Ryan Stevens, is here and he can clarify for me. Is it one or is it two subscriptions?
Two
We have
subscriptions.
two for the city. So these were numbers run from January through about July, I think, end of July, showing what the city was paying to Black Hills and then ultimately what the benefit was of the solar, community solar subscriptions that we have. And you can see in dollar wise, it's a pretty small amount, but I know Jenny was explaining to me on the phone last week that it can have something to do with just what kind of subscription you have, how much money you've invested in the community solar subscription. And I don't know, I've neglected to ask Ryan this ahead of time if we know just kind of what our subscriptions look like.
Yeah, our investment is zero.
Well then.
So that's a big savings.
But we pay something, right, to be a subscriber or
No.
not at all? Okay, thank you. That helps clarify.
But
So we're
the ordinary person would.
It's a Black Hills question.
Okay. All right. There you go. And John B. Hill is here, Jenny, with Black.
Okay.
Hills. You can say what his title is.
Yeah. Hi, Community Affairs, Jenny, and no, we don't have, and they're not required to invest to be an off-taker of solar. And we don't have a lot of individual subscribers mostly, especially with our low to moderate income programs. Those are directed towards things like housing authorities or different places where we have a larger off-taker. Who then provides those bill credits to their constituents or their customers. That's at least the way the model has worked at this point.
So are the subscribers, are they paying anything to the project developer at all? Or they're
No,
not,
they're not.
paying anything? You guys are
They're
just,
That's correct. The like, as an example, the housing authority will just be an off-taker, and then they have, contracted amount for energy, and they pass the credits on to individual meters.
So
That's
if a municipality wanted to maximize their return on a solar garden, they would have to invest money. And then you'd have to find a company that can create the solar garden for you that would just act as a contractor and not as a middleman.
Yeah, so the way that ours works currently is that we send out an RFP for those solar gardens, and then people bid into it. Those bids then will be the bidder is determined to be the winner of that RFP process, and then they build it. And then what they do on the front end is they do look for partnerships, they do look for off takers. And so, as an example, in my experience with the city, there were opportunities where if we give really good lease or maybe $0 lease options to the solar garden, that can impact what they're willing to negotiate in terms of their contract with the city for energy.
So the bottom line there is it's really not available to municipalities in the Black Hills service area to directly construct a solar garden.
I guess you could bid into the RFP process if you wanted to. It's difficult you'd probably need a partner.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm understanding your question and answer. The city theoretically could bid or be a partner with someone to bid into community solar.
Sure, I mean, I
build and be a part of-
I guess the way I would conceptualize it, again, limited, but my experience with the city is if we wanted to say, hey, we want to be the primary off taker of this, we will subscribe to 100% to this 2 megawatt garden, and we're going to give you land and we're gonna whatever, and in return, this is the, this is the price of energy we're willing to contract for in a PPA over time. So you could do that, and then you still have a third party who's gonna bid in, they have then an advantage during the process and, could potentially win that and provide it to you.
Or we could net meter and sell any tax credits.
A little bit further in the weeds than I could be there, but.
Lots of different ways to slice and dice.
Yeah.
Jenny, I do have a question for you on the 56 communities that are now doing solar plus storage. Do you have an idea of what kind of storage those communities are doing?
It's all battery storage. In terms of which types of battery technologies, I don't know, but yeah, it's typically battery storage paired at the same site as the solar project. So they are, co-locating those facilities. And that's what we tend to see is mostly battery storage at this scale, just because of the project size and the way the cost for that has come down.
Sure, thank you. And then on the Massachusetts add-in for the low and middle income, that's a fee that shows up on everybody's bill. Is that correct? That then subsidizes?
It is. Yeah. So it is kind of like the RISA in Colorado, like it's a fund that everybody pays into and then can be directed towards specific program offerings. So yeah, it's called the SMART program, and it's used for not just community solar, but other solar projects, storage projects, couple other things in the state that are, it is ratepayer funds that are coming in, and they've decided, to set aside a portion of those funds to support their low and moderate income customers.
Thank you.
And that would have to go in front of the Public Utility Commission in order to have the low and moderate income program. Is that correct? They'd have to approve that.
And that's a question to John or to Jenny.
Technically, yes, because it's part of rate base, so.
That's part of rate base. Remember to speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry, yeah. I guess I was quiet because I was thinking, but I wasn't sure. So, but I'm pretty sure it would have to go, it would be part of a rate base and it would become a rider. And so, yes, it would have to go before the PUC.
That's my understanding as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I missed the question. I apologize. I must have been in my own head.
Well, with if a community wanted to have more for the low and moderate income, a community solar project, that would have to go in front of the Public Utility Commission. Gives you a certain programs that you give out in the community, and they would have to approve the community solar if you wanted to just designate it to the low and moderate income, a special project.
So,
If you're still working with Black Hills, if
Well,
you,
that's what I'm assuming, yes.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I can tell you that most of our community solar gardens, there is either a carve out for low to moderate income, or they are specifically dedicated to low to moderate income. We have several of the 500 kilowatt variety that are 100% low to moderate income so
That would be more of what I would be looking at right now, because we have a pretty high majority of low and moderate income. So of looking at that type of a model where it's just dedicated for that.
sure.
And what does a carve out mean, John?
So if you have 200, if you have a 2 megawatt solar garden, perhaps 500,000 or a quarter of it is dedicated to low to moderate income subscribers.
Understand. So it's a load based carve out.
Yeah,
And-
production based essentially. Yeah, right.
it's
So many people.
subsidized by all customers.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I'm not sure about Black Hill's situation, but sometimes it's subsidized by all customers. Sometimes it's subsidized by the other subscribers. or could be subsidized by, grant dollars or just other pots of money.
Yeah, I think, and I'm getting a little bit further than I'm maybe completely comfortable talking, but what I've seen again with the low to moderate income, especially those that have won. They typically are looking for using volunteer labor, they're using them for training programs, they're looking to partner with maybe Kathy, as you saw, nonprofits where they are willing to give dollars back to a community effort in return. So there's lots of different things that they do to win those, those RFP bids for low to moderate income that eventually, kind of help to bring the cost of that down so that they can give deeper discounts to the low to moderate income subscribers.
Another question for you, John. So are we on the bidder list for solar gardens within, say, the county here? Is the city on the bidder list?
No, you all don't bid. So these things, I mean, we do them like probably 2, 3, 4 a year.
Yeah,
That we're sending out RFPs for. They're typically, because the municipality can't take the tax credit incentives. That's why you typically need a partner.
gotcha.
And so that's why, I mean, the best thing to do would say, we're open to doing community solar. Hey, all of you folks that are bidding, what do you need from us? Like, how do we participate? Because then they would maybe be more open to citing them in your communities, especially if you have vacant land or if you have, areas that you'd like to see those things built in.
Yeah, even utilities until a few years ago couldn't take advantage of the tax credits until they finally changed it. And that's why wind farms and some of the first solars were all done with partnerships through the utilities, because that's how they got the lower prices.
These are federal tax credits.
And yes,
Well, sounds like something we as a city should look into more. Particularly, there may be some land south of town that becomes available in the next few years.
Well, and I'll just share with you, like, as an example, we did a presentation to the city of Pueblo they were asking, how do we get to 100% renewable consumption for the city? And our answer was, take full advantage of all of the RFPs that we have coming out, like find your partner and be 100% off take or some of these things. That would be the fastest way for you to get there.
Right.
yeah.
What is the peak consumption in a day in Canyon City?
I don't know that offhand.
Is that a number you can give out? Like peak and average, basically, like what energy needs the city has?
Are you talking specifically the city as a customer or as a municipality, like as a?
I would say both. I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that's. I don't know that answer.
I think, yeah, some utilities do put out information on or can provide information as long as customer loads are aggregated. So as long as I forget the rules, but we have done that through Excel, is ask for community loads that, as long as it's not clear who those loads are coming from, that Excel has been willing to provide that information. But for your municipal operations, you should be able to pull that through your utility bills and get that detail.
We can know that part.
Yeah.
Okay, yes,
Yeah, Jenny, you had mentioned right at the beginning, the National Community Solar Partnership, and I know you mentioned that to me on the phone last week. Could you say a little bit more about that technical assistance that's available and who it's for and how it works?
Yeah, the National Community Solar Partnership is a program funded by the Department of Energy at the federal level, and it supports no-cost technical assistance to utilities, solar developers, local governments, NGOs in some cases, really just to answer their questions around community solar. So there is a short application form that asks questions around just like, what do you need to know? Like, what are the problems you're trying to solve and what questions do you have? That's run through Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, but I'd be happy to share the the application and more information. And then, assuming that, yeah, you have questions that we can answer and, have a person that we can connect with, that technical assistance moves forward. And yeah, folks from the national labs as well as some third parties are able to provide it's usually about 40 hours of time to walk through any particular questions you might have. Sometimes we can do like a short modeling exercise or do like a policy screen. So it's designed to be sort of shorter term assistance to help educate folks in the community solar space.
Thanks, that helps.
If I can make one more comment just about the community solar, as you all know, we're going through our clean energy plan, which has a resource plan attached to it, right? You all are intervening at this moment in time. Your opportunity is now. Your opportunity to say to the PUC, we are interested in this. We want it cited in our community. We want to, whatever those things are. This is your opportunity to make your case, to say, look, if you're going to approve this plan, we agree with this with stipulations. I mean, this is your opportunity to say those things. I can tell you that there is no reason that you can't speak with our regulatory team to, find out what your opportunities are and align with that sort of testimony so that you can improve your chances. But as I've heard, and I haven't heard a recent update, but I hear that they're thinking they might settle this by December 27th. Or even earlier, so the time is like immediate. You really should connect with and we've been interested in chatting with you. I know you all have we've reached out. The time is now.
Well, if there's, it is interesting, what's always in my mind, and that Jenny's presentation reminded me of this, is some of the states that are doing so much more with community solar are states like Massachusetts and New York, not exactly in the solar region of the country as we would think it. And, as you think about Canyon City, the quote banana belt of Colorado, if there's a way, whatever those pathways are, that we can do more with that, it makes sense to try to go in that direction.
And as you recall, I mean, our clean energy plan includes 450 megawatts of renewables and battery storage. That's why I say literally the time is now. If you want that, you need to ask for it. You need to include that in your testimony.
I guess we have to weigh that through the stranded costs. And that's
Right.
what one of our big problems is your generating plants, your gas generating plants are not going to be used as efficiently as they're not being used efficiently now. So it's one of those to where that's where we have to decide how far you go with that.
And is that, maybe we can't even go there in this discussion, but if theoretically, if suddenly a lot more solar, whether it's through BAG or whoever, however, if a lot more solar became available to users in this part of the state, would Black Hills just be able to sell more of the gas generating power to someone else? And then what does that do to the stranded?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I can tell you that those resources are going to be necessary for a long time. I mean, natural gas generation is being built today to replace coal to
Sure.
support renewables. That plant's only, 20 years old.
Sure.
It's got plenty of life left.
So,
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, 10,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's a baby.
Yeah, it's got plenty of life left and plenty of useful opportunity. And yes, we do sell energy on the open market when we can. And as you all know, we do a 90-10 split where the customers receive 90% of the return, and we receive 10% as an incentive to continue to do that.
Okay,
Thanks.
That's
Generated good discussion. Yeah.
thank you, Jenny. I hope you enjoyed our discussion around the table.
I do. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. Appreciate it. I'll send these slides over and feel free to follow up, Emily, if you have other questions or anybody else in the group.
Sure, and you're more than welcome to, this is a public meeting and hang on, or you can, if you've got other things to do, that's fine too. So we need to talk, the committee needs to talk about our schedule here a little bit. Ryan has to leave at 11, Kathy has to leave at 11. I have to leave at sometime before noon if I'm gonna eat lunch today. So we still have Gail Connors to hear from. And is she online? Okay, so but there are a couple of really important things for us to chat about too. So we'll see where we get to. Maybe I can fill you in later or something, Kathy. If we've got, because there are some decisions and maybe some feedback. Do you have anything particular feedback that you need to make to Kurt?
Not yet.
Okay, all right.
Well,
Okay.
John, can I just bring something up?
Yeah.
This is preliminary right now, and if we don't have time, it would give me more time to work a little bit more on it to have it done a little bit better.
Well, I hope one of my suggestions is gonna save you a little more work,
Okay,
save you some of that work. So we'll get to it for sure.
okay.
And just let everybody know. And so with that, Gail, would you like to take over here and fly our presentation?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can.
Here, I'll get the video rolling. Maybe.
There she is.
Ah,
There she is. Hi, everybody. Hi, Emily. Kath.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Gail Connors, and I work for the Public Utilities Commission. But prior to that, I only started in May, and prior to that, I worked for the Colorado utilities for about 18 years. So it's been an interesting transition, and I'm learning more about how the PUC operates in a regulatory way. You were discussing, and I can give you a little bit about background, but you were discussing community choice aggregation. And I will tell you that it went before commissioners, I believe, last week. It is on our website. There is a presentation on it on our website. And I believe it's going to the legislature. It could be the 12th. Last I heard it was the 15th, so probably might be sometime within there.
Sorry, Gail, we did get copies of the report, the PUC report, and in fact, we had the city printed off for members of the committee, so we're.
Oh, good. The
And it is
resource
December
adequacy.
15th.
No, sorry, you were mentioning community choice energy, I'm just referring to CCE. But you go ahead and talk about resource adequacy.
Well, I was going to tell you what the proceeding was for that, because you can still go in and draft comments or concerns. It is 221 dash, I think 0027E. Let me confirm that. And you can still go in and write comments. And basically what the commissioners did was they accepted the report, didn't change anything, and it's just going on to the legislature.
Gail, just so we did the same thing, 22I, not 221.
Okay, 22I, yeah, I was just looking that up, just to make sure. 22I dash 0027E, as in everything. And I was just looking at it in e-filings, and they do have quite a few comments in there, so. And I can send you guys the link to that, to the comments page when I get off of the call. So that's going on. A couple other things coming up that may or may not affect you. We've got Atmos. I don't know if Atmos is your associated with
Atmos.
Atmos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have, yes, they're asking for rate.
They had a public hearing last Thursday. There's another one coming up January 3rd that you may want to participate in. And it is on the website under the calendar of events, and I can send you the link to that as well. January 12th, it looks like they're having a Black Hills electric tariff ECA, electric cost adjustment. On the 19th, there's another Black Hills ERP, renewable energy supply, and clean heat plan on the 19th. And that's actually the second public hearing that was scheduled. The first one was in November when I saw Emily and Kathy. So those are the kind of the upcoming ones that I thought would be of most interest to you folks. And as far as my background, like I said, I've been in the utilities world for about 19 years now, and I worked for a utility for about 18 of those. And I was primarily in issues management group, but my background is in communications. And I've done up a plan for the PUC, which is largely actually going to focus on helping the public understand the PUC's role and how people can get involved and participate. Because what I am finding is there's definitely, there's a gap there between what the PUC is trying to do and helping the public understand their role in it. So, and I understand that because in fact, I have some just general questions for you folks too. And even Jenny can chime in on this too, NREL. I get the sense, because last summer we did some community meetings that actually went fairly well. It was around the clean heat plans, but they were also doing some work around equity issues, which is an initiative of the PUC. But what I'm seeing is I think there's a gap, especially with the public hearings, just the nature of how they're structured. And I think it'll behoove us to do more public education in advance of the public hearings. Because during the public hearings, the commissioners, they're just really listening. They can't really answer anything. They can't really comment on anything. I'm trying to make them better. I'm trying to see what I can do to make the public more interested in advance of the public hearings, where there's more flexibility to do and educate and get communications out. Kind of to set it up for the public hearing in a way. But I'd be curious to see what you folks think. Is it PUC just, is it just an intimidating process?
I think, we've just been, up until recently, we've been pretty much disconnected as a city. The city hadn't intervened in any rate cases for, I think, over 10 years until our intervention in the clean energy plan now. And it's just, and that's the city government, the public itself, I think is even much more disconnected. And I'm not, I guess because it is such a legal bound process that it is harder for people to figure out how to engage in a successful way.
Well, and I would add to that, Emily, that not just legal, but technical and finance.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of those three things that go into PUC decisions that make it difficult from my perspective to participate, because getting up to speed on that, maybe after you do that, you get hired by a utility or by the PUC or something, but it's quite a learning curve.
Yeah.
And it can be very complex. I mean, there's a lot of, especially the technical part of it and what you can do and what you can't do. And then the regulatory process as well. The industry is certainly going through a huge transformation, and just looking at distributed system planning and what's involved with that in terms of they're looking at things, the utilities are looking at things they've never, I don't want to say they never looked at it before, but they've never looked at it quite in the same way to really gear up and shore up their distribution systems, because distributed energy resources are definitely having an impact on that. And more people, more demand, and trying to integrate those systems between distributed resources and your utility of choice, whatever that is. I do know that coming up towards the end of December as well, there is a filing period to file comments for, they're looking at alternatives for transmission planning in the San Luis Valley. And yeah, they're going out. So the deadline for comments, to sign up for comments, is December 30th. You need to file by February 3rd, and I can send you some additional info on that as well. But it's helpful for me. I do a lot of stakeholder outreach and engagement, so I really appreciate being able to participate in your meeting today. And that's why I asked those questions, because I'm trying to look at the things that we need to change to better accommodate our stakeholders, the public's not only knowledge of what the PUC does, but how best to get involved with it.
Dale, I think just from my perspective, way too many years in the utility business, and also as just a general person in the public, one of the things about the PUC is that, they're supposed to represent the state as far as anybody that uses electricity, gas, rides on a taxi or bus or whatever. But the trouble is that it's not an elected position to where the politics raise its head, because most commissioners are chosen by the governor. And yeah, I think they have to go through an approval process, but I think that's one of the disconnects from the general public, is the fact that it's not very representative, in the sense that there's still politics that enter into it, and they're not necessarily the greater good of everybody.
And to tag on to that a little bit, Kathy, I think one of the challenges that I have is going to the PUC website. Because it is really just a mess.
Oh, it is.
And it's not straightforward. There probably needs to be one website for every PUC activity, transportation, electricity, gas, and whatever, rather than a unified website, because it is generally, when you go to a PUC website, you have a specific question about a specific, activity that the PUC regulates, rather than the universe. And so, there's a whole lot that could be done with the PUC website to make it more consumer public.
And we're working on it, believe me. It's funny, because when I started there, because I'm so used to the PUC through the energy part, it never occurred to me that towing was something they regulated. So, and oddly enough, that's the one we get like the most hits on in terms of people coming to the website. So, yeah, there's a whole new legislation around that too, and unfortunately some misinformation got out ahead of it, and some people, and I'll just share this with you, because I don't know if towing is a problem in Canyon City, but the new legislation basically says they have to give 24-hour notice for towing. However, there's a lot of exceptions to that. And we have that on our webpage, but most of them are, don't park in front of a driveway, don't park in front of a fire lane, don't park in front of, in an intersection, don't park in somebody else's parking space. So those are the exceptions. And I think we have some people that kind of think, well, we can park anywhere. It's going to take them 24 hours to notice it. And that's just, it's not true. So, and there's just a couple other things that came up with the new legislation as well. So, anyway, that's going to be, they're coming up with some rules around that actually fairly shortly. But yeah, towing and our e-filing pages, they did an analytics study on it, and those were the 2 top pages that everybody went to.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a key proceedings page though, too, as well, so people can go in. Because I know e-filings is very difficult to navigate, but taking the key proceedings and putting them in a space where people can go and just say, okay, here's what's happened. Here's what's coming up next. Here's when they're going to make a decision. And then having links off of those.
Yeah,
I think that.
just have it say electricity or have it say
Right.
gas, so.
PG is pretty good in model. And yeah, in my experience.
So Gail, did you have some other questions that you had for us?
Well, okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. Who do you get your electricity? Who's your electric provider now?
Black Hills.
Black Hills, okay. And
We
gas,
love the people that work for Black Hills.
I have a good friend of mine that works for Black Hills, Carol Thomas. If you ever get a chance to meet her, she's great. And she
I'm
works
surprised
with,
that's not me.
huh? I know, we've been
You
seeing
and I
each other at the
crossed
best
each other
meetings.
a lot lately. Yeah, yeah.
And Atmos isn't your gas?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm writing-
If that's all the questions you got for us, we do have some other committee business we'd like to get in
Absolutely.
before we have some people that are.
You're welcome
Taking
to
off.
stay and come in person when you can.
I would
Yes.
love to. I would love to. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Sure,
thank
you
you.
bet. Thank you, Gail.
You guys,
We do have a copy of Kirk's draft. I do have a couple of typos to talk about, but and I did read it, and it's I think it's very good. For the last section on the municipal utility operations, rather than repeat the similar, things that are similar with a co-op or with Black Hills, I would focus on what's different. Because just repeating the information that you've already provided will be, as redundancy tends to put me to sleep. And that would be pretty redundant, but so focus on what's different between this particular topic, the municipal utility operations, and the other ones. And I think that will maybe shorten it up, what you've got to do. And will provide a better understanding for our audience, which is city council.
So, yeah, do you want us to just email you with either the questions or edits we have?
A couple, 2 or 3 of the council people, so you want to keep it simple. But I also want to give a little overview of some of the more important
Oh, yeah.
things, so that, because if the council hasn't looked at this stuff for quite some time, and that's why I tried to put the first page, little reminder. Sure. And I tried to go by what your outline was, John. That's why it's
Mhm.
tailored like this.
Mhm.
But I do think that if you take a look on, with Black Hills, energy option on page 2,
I need to put a brief description about, the rate calculation. Because I think that that's vitally important, because you're gonna
It
see,
is.
you're gonna see
Yeah.
major differences between the two with how do they calculate the rate.
Sure.
So I was gonna include that and, just a couple of things, also whether we wanted to make a little listing. Like, the Black Hills energy programs that they have, and I was not able to attend that meeting when Black Hills came here. And then also, in the summertime, I mentioned something about the Colorado Energy Office. About finding out what types of programs that they do have, because I think that both the Black Hills programs that we currently have, as well as any state or federal programs, is information that is beneficial to us today. So we're not looking at a, longer term, so I think we really need to have someone from the Colorado Energy Office in an upcoming meeting, so we can find out.
We should mention to the Energy Outreach Colorado, what I'm passing around is some summary information that I've gathered from Upper Arkansas area council of governments, and then indirectly from Colorado, from Energy Outreach Colorado, which is the entity, as I understand it, was some assistance to lower income utility that comes from. So this is just some data, not to get off track, but I didn't want to spend any time on it, other than to say, here's some data about the assistance that's coming into Fremont County.
You know, Emily, the breakdown by cities, is there an unincorporated, do you have data on unincorporated?
Don't know, I can certainly find out.
Would you ask, because that would really give you a complete picture, I think.
Yeah,
Emily, did you pull this out of the annual report?
actually, Dee Dee Clement with Loaves and Fishes ran reports off the Energy Outreach Colorado website is what she told me, but I haven't
Okay.
looked at that.
I only ask because their annual report does comprehensively break down by different communities and whatnot. I don't remember how it's broken. I think Fremont County as an area might be there in their annual report, Emily, and it's actually pretty easy to find online.
Energy Outreach Colorado's.
Yes.
And it's
Yep.
okay.
We do have the PUC report here. It's a pretty big one. It looks pretty comprehensive. It looks like the PUC just going through the index of the questions that they've asked and they answered. Looks like it's pretty comprehensive. And they probably deserve some credit for that, PUC staff does. Carol and I were talking earlier, and one of the topics we touched on was how do we know what are the programs available to low income people, or perhaps other grants or something like that. And that might be something that we think about a little bit and see if there's some way to answer that question, and maybe it's through the energy outreach.
Yeah, what I have heard, and this is just in, different conversations, but Energy Outreach Colorado tells you that if you call the 800 heat helpline, that's the most comprehensive way to get individuals that qualify connected with services. And they encourage folks not to assume that you don't qualify, because they fairly substantially raised, I think, the minimums recently. And so I would certainly, excuse me, the only sound I have.
And I was thinking more on the bigger rural type grants, some of the federal money that's coming out for, municipalities that need upgrades or something like that. That's more what I was thinking of. If there's something out there, even like environmental justice type stuff, where not environmental, but like social justice type stuff, that we have a high poverty level. Can we look at some of that stuff that might be able to help, even just help us decide what we can do with our options that we've been looking at. So that's more what I was looking at. And John said that the city has a grant writer The county has a grant writer, so if we could narrow down, maybe just in our own heads, what we think we might want to find out, what kind of types of grants we might need. Maybe we could, put that to them or the city council, whoever have to go through to get something through the city grant writer.
Or find out what's available.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a high level
Yeah, sure.
examination of what's actually out there,
That's a good idea.
yeah.
And Carol, to your point, so a lot of the federal dollars are gonna be awarded to the Colorado Energy Office, and they haven't even
Yeah.
built the infrastructure
Oh, I
yet
know.
to roll out those
I know.
dollars. And what I've heard is they'll
Yeah.
have more definition in place like by June of next
Right,
year.
right.
So, certainly being connected to the Colorado Energy Office is
Yeah.
really
Getting ahead of that.
important for
You
the
know, what we
city.
might-
Good time to do that right
Yeah,
now.
right
Yeah.
now.
Absolutely.
Prior to that.
So that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
So that, I will mention that to Brian tomorrow. I'll see him
Okay.
tomorrow and say, hey, Brian, is there something that,
Yeah.
we can look at there or, some way to get a handle on that. The other thing that Carol and I were talking, we had a pretty good meeting for you.
It's so productive, you get here early.
But one of the things, if Canyon City wants to municipalize, there's some significant financial hurdles to be overcome. And the question is with, is there some way, and really, so that's a huge obstacle. And to just get, to make it work in terms of dollars and cents and profit and loss for Canyon City to municipalize is going to be really, really tough. The question is there, with the legislature now considering consumer choice energy, is there some way to get in front of the legislature and say, hey, look, and kind of advocate for Canyon City, say, look, we would like to municipalize. We think there's cost savings there. If some of the financial costs of such an undertaking can be handled in some manner. And is there some way that the legislature could provide some new rules that would allow municipalities to essentially access the state budget to be able to do something like that? And that might be a win-win situation for both an investor-owned utility and a municipality that wanted to municipalize. But that's kind of a touchy subject because we're saying, hey, can the state help us pay for this?
Exactly.
But
My question, like, why I asked earlier what the peak and average loads were is, you could determine by how many households in the community, what their loads are, and then what we're paying for our rates, figure out how much money we're spending as a community on this. And then from there, determine, how much we'd be bringing in per year based on the rates that we're paying now. And then that would, that's a hole that I'm seeing, like, how much money would, the current rate base be paying
So-
into a municipal owned.
So I think what we know as a committee is that you can get ballpark figures, and you can even get bigger than ballpark figures of what the dollars and cents may look like. But if you want to get down to the really brass tacks, so that you have a high confidence in the numbers that you're looking at, of how the finances work, it costs a lot of money. That involves a study. It's the issue is how precise do you want to be. We can get ballpark, but there's a lot that goes into that.
So, and billing keeps track of this information though, right? So it would just be a query to billing to determine how many kilowatt hours the community uses over the course of the year.
So
This is proprietary.
So that's the issue, is that this is a private company, Black Hills is a private company. They're not obligated to share that information.
Huh, okay. Interesting,
We
so,
don't think we can get.
So it's not as simple as it seems.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and the PUC study from 2020 20, wasn't it?
21.
21, gave us some pretty good indicators as to where we stand in relationship to what we pay versus the rest of the state. So that was a good.
Yeah, and I know I haven't been, this is my first meeting, so I'm
That's all right.
not seeing information.
You're fine.
But and that plays into, because I am interested in this community becoming a municipally owned
Yeah.
utility or having a municipally owned utility. And so that's my interest is like once you turn it into that, you now have the rate base paying the city.
Yeah,
And so what
okay.
number is that? How do
I think you're coming at from that direction where how much, if we municipalize, how much would we have as a city to share with the rest of the
That's what I'm saying.
departments?
You're looking at
to-
break even, you're looking at break even, profit and loss, you know,
And compare that.
yeah.
and I mean, for paying Black Hills for their poles and their
Right,
you know,
exactly, yeah.
everything that their capital.
Right.
that
Well,
they
and
have.
it even gets more complicated
Oh,
than that,
yes.
because technically,
Costs and-
as a legal matter, Black Hills has invested money in generation capacity
Sure,
for our benefit because of the Public Utility Commission rules.
Mhm.
And so if we no longer are using that generation capacity, go to some other thing. In essence, that becomes a stranded cost.
right,
That's like a contract between us and Black Hills. Or any served area in the Black Hills territory, that they provide what's needed.
Yeah.
Okay, and we agreed to pay.
Okay.
But now, if we're not gonna pay for that by through bills in the future, that's a stranded cost,
right,
which means that that's either a takings, either a municipality is takings of private property. Or interfering in a contract, and that's all gets governed by the PUC, it gets, with rules and all kinds of things, so it gets really complicated to try and unwind all that. If you want to see how one community tried to do it, Pueblo went through the motions
right,
and had the studies done. And they took it to their voters and it failed in front of the voters to municipalize for them. And so that's an example of what has to be done, what you have to know. And even what Kirk has, and this is the cliff notes of what you have to know
Yeah,
to be able to do it.
well, and I might also mention that the studies that were done in Pueblo, Black Hills consultants said it would not pay for it. And the consultant that was hired by Pueblo said it would pay for itself. So we really, because the vote wasn't approved, we really will never know which one is right. I mean,
Unless something changes.
yeah, unless something changes, you really don't know.
As
Which,
some-
so there you're talking about the consulting companies. They could look at the same thing and depending on who's paying the bill, they might come up with something different.
That's I've used consultants throughout my professional career, and that's the rule of thumb. You can always find a consultant that'll tell you what you want to hear.
yeah,
Yeah,
Just let them know, just let them know.
yeah.
So it's difficult.
I appreciate you guys letting me have.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I do it. for you.
That's what you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next year.
The other thing that we probably need to talk about is schedule. We've got, what do you think? What's your timeline for this, for finishing it up? I mean, considering the holidays.
What I was planning on doing was, also trying to outline what the steps would be for municipalization. That would be, one of the last steps. But I wanna bring out a little bit at the very end and put some information in there. Because basically, we need to talk a little bit, if you're gonna be a municipal generation, you're gonna have to look at the 80%. And then, how do we do it? Do we do it with municipal owned or do it with the park? Just listing a few of those things and just saying, if we do that, and then as we get through with the steps taken, you talked a little bit about more of like stranded costs, who you have to go, and, you know, just identifying some of those issues that like Black Hills study identified, and just discuss those just a little bit. Just so that you have an idea of the steps that might be taken. I'm not saying it's gonna be everything there, but at least it would help us to identify the steps that might need to be taken.
Well, that's important for council to understand exactly how big the problem is, what kind of resources you have to throw at it to get the answers that you're getting.
Yes. Let's say more about the community choice energy model in there. In case the legislature passes something, this is what it says.
Well, just let me say that this is a daunting thing, but this is the meat. The rest of it is comments that were rolled into their report. So if you read, I think it's 34 pages, and I did it, I was proud of myself, because usually it's like, okay, it's not a novel, I don't want to read it. And then just write down some questions and some impressions as to what the PPC says about this. Just, I actually did that too. It is, it's, there's a lot of mays and ifs and coulds, but it still gives you another little viewpoint of something else that's out there.
Well,
So if there's, I think the direct answer, Kirk, is
Oh.
if there's a, something that we know of that may be coming down the pike, a placeholder for it. I mean, you wouldn't have to spend a lot of time because if,
Yeah.
that we don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But there's a possibility something could happen that could change things, and having a placeholder.
Yeah, and this is really a new model. It's
Yeah.
not a
Oh, yeah.
municipal utility. It's not a co-op. It's not an IOU, but it's a system that would operate within an IOU's territory, I guess is how I say it. So it's worth at least having, like you said.
Well, it's definitely what I call a battleship change, where you're gonna have to turn that battleship, and it's going to take time, effort, and political will.
Right.
All kinds of stuff, but, it's worth looking at, I think, because they've taken the California experience and said, do this, don't do this, which is good.
Now, is this going to council? Is that the purpose of this?
The intended purpose of that is to fulfill our mandate. So yes.
Okay.
yes, It should go to them.
My only suggestion is if you want to put in there what might be. Like you said, Emily, what might be is a completely different section of this might be coming up or whatever, because we don't know.
Well, all of
If you're gonna give it to the council.
Yeah.
Give them the report. If you don't know it's gonna happen, or if it's very questionable. Why be leading?
Well, I think if I'm understanding it correctly, I think it's just to continue to give that full framework to council of what these different entities are in Colorado and what they might be in the future in the case of this.
So what exactly is your concern, Doug?
My concern is that, okay, I read through this whole thing. I think it's great. You did a good job. But Emily brought up what could be,
Yeah,
right? Is that what you were saying, Emily?
No.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood.
I think this fits right into the report that Kurt is drafting. Because it's just like a piece of the framework.
let me help. Let me see if I can. Here, Emily.
You
So-
don't need to help me help them.
Oh, well, that's the
I don't need any help. My wife helps me. All the help I need.
So there are things moving.
Yes,
Okay.
there are.
There are things moving. The legislature is doing stuff. So where we can recognize that and include a placeholder, we don't know what's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
something's
Right.
happening. That seems
And
appropriate.
that's fine
Yeah.
in
and that
its
was
own
written-
section.
And that
Yeah,
was,
and
in its
that's-
own section.
That's Emily's point.
Well,
Yeah.
it's.
if you read it, that was in there. it just says,
Right.
what are some of the potential
Mhm.
cost benefit reduction? And it listed 5 or 6 different things. And can we say exactly how that's gonna happen? No, but they're identified. Here are some of the things that could be done. And if, I believe that that was how it was written, that
Yeah.
these are potential options.
Right.
Okay,
So let me sharpen my question a little bit better. So the legislature is going to be considering this report and what they want to do. Okay. Should we, and by we, I mean, should this committee recommend to council that the city get involved with our political leaders and say, raise our hands and say, hey, look, we want to, we want to lower costs for our customers. And really, one way we think that that can happen is through municipalization, but it depends on on exactly how that happens. Because it can be a big fight, it can be very expensive, and it can be, ultimately cost prohibitive. And you can actually make some errors that will end up costing customers more, and so we don't want to do that. But is there some way that city council or the city could interface with our legislatures? Carol suggested maybe having them sit here. And that's probably a good suggestion as long as they're not in session.
Yeah,
Once they go into session, forget it.
well, some of them
You know.
from this area are here on weekends too, so.
They are. They are.
I remember we used to have those legislative hours, which
Saturday.
went away, and that's too bad.
And-
That comes back.
And are there other political contacts that we have or can access that may be productive in exploring other avenues? I mean, the idea is, if we look at everything that's been done, we know all the problems that are going to be there. But is there another way to step back and think outside the box and say, here are some novel solutions to those problems that maybe come through a political process that we could avail ourselves of?
Well, and it's the squeaky wheel thing too.
Sure, absolutely.
If, if people in Denver don't know that here in Canyon City, we're having a problem, or we think we have a problem, and we'd like to find a solution, they're not going to offer any solutions or consider our problem when they're finding solutions. So I think it's a good idea.
So that's something that we can think about.
New Year's resolutions.
A New Year's resolution, think about what might be the best way to achieve that or whatever, but because you can, based on what I've seen of government, you can have the best representation you can afford,
Mhm. Yeah.
through lobbyists. And that's a simple fact of life, that if you can't afford much, you may not have much.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, having said that, that's a pretty dark view of the process, but because we are an entity, because we do have citizens, because of our particular situation, we'd have a voice.
Mhm.
We do have a voice, and there are ways that we can maximize that voice. And perhaps something we can do.
Well, and you don't know if a lobbyist is already focusing on something like this for another entity, and we could just say, plug us in, so you're right, John, that's the voice the last voice in the ear,
Well, and I think a lot of thoughts, but one thought is that on the community choice energy thing, it says we talked before. To a great extent, the concept has been driven by northern Front Range communities whose goals are different from ours.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's good for the legislators to hear our perspective, because it's gonna be different from the people behind this.
Yeah.
And certainly when we testified in whatever that month was, where they had a public hearing. There were a few Southern Colorado people testifying, but it was important that voice was.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, our next meeting
is tomorrow night at the end. At 6:00.
Maybe your meeting. We do have, January tenth and January 24th.
I do have a quick question about something that John Deal said earlier about the immediate timeframe around, if the city wanted to have more of a voice.
That community choice.
No,
With it.
The
Probably gonna be sold.
the energy plan, isn't it?
Yeah, it's for the clean energy plan.
Yeah.
correct.
And, I mean, I don't know if that's something the city, maybe we can just talk with Ryan about.
And what was the issue on that again?
Well, I was just making the comment that, so right now, we're going through that clean energy plan and you
Mhm.
currently you are intervening, and so. I'll just speak frankly, I mean, I think that what I'm hearing from our regulatory team is this is likely to be settled by the end of the year. And if that's the case, which means that settled means the parties agree to it, and so it moves forward, if that clean energy plan moves forward. If that's the case, you would want to try and get the best you can out of it, which is, hey, if this is going forward, we want to ask the community solar, that the renewables be, in our area, that we have, that we have, however that
Yeah.
works, but
Okay.
just to say, we want something out of this deal.
Right.
Right? Like, if this is going forward, we want the best we can get out of it.
Mhm.
And, not to get too far out there, but there's nothing that prevents the city from speaking with our regulatory team to align in that conversation. So I would just leave it at that.
Okay, but that's.
Thanks for the
thank you.
hint.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll see what we can do, because I do think it's important if you're gonna intervene. Take advantage.
Get something out of it.
Yeah.
Get something out of it.
yeah.
When did you say the next meeting, sir, John?
So the next meeting is the next scheduled meeting is January 9th and then January 23rd. Okay, and that's why I was asking Kurt what you thought your time.
I'm just thinking, because I know when I do writing, I don't settle with the first draft and I have to sit and sure. I'm looking at hopefully to have most all of it done by the first meeting in February.
Okay,
That's what my goal, that would give me. Because with the holiday and everything coming around, it's hard to get. Cause I just have to sit down, and have to dedicate like 3-4 days, just work on nothing else.
Right.
And,
sure.
but that is what I would hope that I can have something, I'm not saying it's gonna be complete. Because there'll probably be some recommendations or some changes in it, but hopefully by that first meeting in February.
So do we want to number one, I do think that we need to cut our scope of meetings down. Maybe go to once a month, 2 hours. We are, burning up Ryan Stevens' time here in these meetings. And I would like us to consider something like that. So maybe what we do is we meet January 9th and then the first meeting in February. And what we can do January 9th is, react to this and see what our thoughts are there, see if there's something we can do. I will talk to Ryan Tuesday and see if there's some way that, stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, that we can participate in the political process to help do something. What that is, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just getting our state representative and our state senator to sit around the table with us, and we can chew their ears about that.
It's a start, yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
a good start.
And then I just because I made myself a note a while back, I wondered if we just wanted to think about, do we want to follow up and have Luis Reyes from Kid Carson Electric talked to us sometime. That was, you know, in order to follow up with what their experience has been. And I just had to go to that. Just keep that idea floating or we.
Yeah,
John, in light of what you said about cutting down on the meetings, how long or do you foresee at all, have you thought about it, this committee continues to function?
so it's pretty indefinite, you know, there's two different ways to look at it. I mean, as long as there's developments that council may not have time to learn about and be able to sort out. There may be a function of role for this committee.
Okay.
But at some point, the other way to look at it is that we do have a charter
Right?
from city council. And do we have a way to bring that charter to a close? Do we have a way to accomplish the goals that the city council have set out for us? And so, you know, this is probably a council discussion too. That does council want to, because this is a, you know, something we all commit to do, have to be here. And what, you know, what do we want to do? You know, as individual committee members, do we want to continue on indefinitely, or do we want to see it come to a close?
I think it's important just to kind of add on to that some things happen in timeframes that are kind of beyond our control. For example, if for some reason we decided community choice energy could be a way for the city to meet its goal of lowering costs to residents and businesses, if we decided that, then we're on kind of a legislative time frame. We can't make that happen without enabling legislation. So that is one thing that could make this process take a little longer. And just in general, it's complex stuff. And I just.
Well, I don't have a problem coming to these meetings. There just needs to be a real purpose for coming.
Yeah. I agree.
feel a purpose.
Yeah, I don't
Well-
know about you, but I learn something new every time.
Yeah,
All right, so let's address that.
Yeah,
Our purpose is not learning,
I know.
you know,
Well,
that's
it's
not our
the
purpose.
way We need to learn so we can filter it through our process to city council.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Learning for learning's sake to transmit it to city council is not necessarily our purpose. Our purpose is to discuss and be able to tell city council about energy options. Okay, so it's not learning for learning's sake.
No,
There's a definite goal. We need to be able to identify that goal. Okay, we as the committee need to identify those goals that we're gonna say, okay, we've got. That's probably worthwhile talking about when we get everybody back around the table. You know, what goals do we want to set? Because learning for learning's sake, and participate, you know, just going on and on and on is not what we should do.
That's not
I
what I'm
think
hearing.
maybe
Carol.
into semantics here.
Okay.
Because, you know, I'm not learning just so that I can say, oh, yeah, now I know this. I know this in order to do something with that knowledge.
Okay, well, we have to identify the do.
I think we're doing that.
Well, no, I don't necessarily agree excuse me. By continuing meetings with no purpose, without identifiable goals, we're not at that do space. Okay, we need to be able to identify what our goals are. So that we can achieve them. If the goal is, well, we'll wait until the legislature does something and then we'll look at it and advise city council. We're not a permanent advisory committee. We need to have goals and we need to be able to produce a product for city council. That's my view.
I can give a little. You're talking about goals. One of the goals is to find out programs that can help our citizens, just like the Black Hills. Just like this is the third time now I said from the state, what
Sure.
programs are there? That's a goal to find out what programs
Sure.
are there to help our community.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
that's what we're looking at, that we're looking at, just like the community solar now. That presentation gives us the opportunity of a new opportunity to help our community out. So that was a very beneficial presentation. That's what we're looking at, presentations that will help us know what's out there and how that can fit into helping our community out. And that's what I'm trying to portray in this write-up.
I'm not trying to take away
No,
from.
no,
that
I'm
at
just,
all.
but I'm just saying that those are programs and those we're learning, but we're learning what's out there and how can we plug that in to help out everybody in our community.
Okay,
So,
here's,
go ahead, no, go ahead.
There's always something new coming up. There'll be something new coming up 5 years from now.
So the way.
Are we still gonna be meeting?
So the
Because we
way-
Want everything?
So the way to handle that, and I think the appropriate way to approach it is to write those goals in. You know, one of the goals can be, hey, we want to be able to make a recommendation to city council on what the city should do concerning solar. We may want to say, may want to have a recommendation, we want to provide council with a list of opportunities for citizens to save money, either through low income programs or whatever, and provide a listing to council of those types of things. So that's fine, that's great, you know, to have those types of things, but we need to be able to identify those and say, okay, this is what we want to do as a committee to be able to fulfill our charter here. And that, you know, having those goals is fine, it's great. And sometimes we come up across a new goal or a new opportunity as we're going. And so modifying that as we go is not out of the question either, and is appropriate. But nonetheless, we need to be able to write down what our goals are so that we can continue to work towards those ends.
And I think once we get just a little summary that I got that written up, then you can add some of those recommendations on top of that, you know. that
Sure.
You have a background to read it, and then here's what some of the recommendations would be from our committee. that,
Sure.
You know, here's short term and medium term and maybe longer term.
Sure.
So, you know, you're never gonna, you're always gonna have issues to look at. I mean, because you've got, this is a long-term process when you take a look at utilities.
Yeah.
But there's short-term things that we can recommend. And.
And accomplish
Yeah,
on behalf of the city.
yeah, and I think we're right on target.
I do too.
I mean,
Given the nature of the.
But nonetheless, I would disagree with that a little bit, because we don't have our goals written down. And so I think that's something that we need to spend some time doing, is writing down what our goals are, what exactly we want to do. And we can start general.
why don't you come back to the next meeting with some goals?
That would help.
I mean,
because
that
then
way we know what
what
you're,
level you're.
Well,
yeah, what, would you be willing to do that?
so it's something that the committee needs to work on, but the,
We can work on it, just like when I give these reports and
Yeah.
everybody talks about it, so.
No, I think that would be.
That way we got an idea of where, you know, what you're thinking,
okay,
and then we can just,
fair enough.
as other people, it just helps to open up ideas.
Sure,
When you have
Sure, sure.
something to look at versus just
Yep.
saying, well, what are the goals?
gotcha.
Here's a preliminary list and we can, you know, add to it or.
Well, okay, so let's tell you what, why don't you as individual committee members, I will write down what I think are appropriate goals. But if you've got some that are measurable, you know, and achievable, write them down and email them to me. So if you have some ideas on what goals we should have, one of the goals that you got right now is to finish the report, you know? But that would be a good exercise for us as committee members. To say, what do we think, what from each individual perspective? What are the goals we should have? What are the things we should accomplish by this committee? So I'm gonna modify that to send an email to the committee requesting goals from each member's perspective, and that way we'll get Kathy involved in this too.
You might not get a whole bunch of goals from me right now.
That's all right. Hey, that's all right.
No, I might be.
This is-
Time on.
This is a process.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? Okay. Anything else?
I didn't hear really much discussion about whether we thought we wanted to hear from Luis Reyes. Is that something we just want to revisit? I mean, the purpose of that was to answer questions that the community nonprofit guy couldn't answer, so that's just something.
Oh, yeah,
Let's do our goal setting thing, our first meeting in January, and see where we get to from that. That's
And taking a look at the.
and taking.
That's big studies.
Yeah.
all right.
Okay,
Sounds good.
we're good. We're adjourned.